government and preschool children?
My name is Frederick Williams, retired adjunct professor from UTSA. I'm one of the founders of the Black Studies minor out there. I taught various courses from African American studies to political power to the Harlem Renaissance, just a wide range of classes. I'm the author of a book that's now being made into a movie on Black Wall Street called Fires of Greenwood, Tulsa Riot in 1921.
My name is Kevin Lewis. I'm born in Buffalo, New York. Came up on the east side, San Antonio, 78202. I'm one of you. I have degrees that I basically, they're just training to me. My education came in the library of St. Philip's, the teachings of Malcolm X, Louis Farrakhan, Martin Luther King, Stevie Biko, Patrice Lumumba, and others that were our heroes. That was where my real education came from. I don't even speak about my degrees because that was training for occupation to me. But I'm one of you, and I appreciate y'all being here.
Peace and greetings. My name is Born Logic Allah. I'm the founder of Non-Logic, which is a video production and marketing company. I'm also the co-founder of Melanized Media, the film production crew that put together Walk on the River. I'm a father of 3. I'm a husband, and I also homeschool.
Okay, thank you. So, are we ready? The first question, First question I'm going to ask, and I just want everyone to ask, and I do ask this because, you know, we have, all y'all, we have so much to share, but we only have a few minutes. And that's not to put a restraint on us, but just to make sure that we are considerate of the fact that other people want to share also, okay? All right. Dr. King had talked about the importance of critical thinking and the development of character. I want to ask you, and each one of y'all to respond to the fact, what does it mean to be educated, and what is the purpose of education? Who would like? Okay.
I'll start. Education, when we want to define education, or what it means to be educated, we have to define the word. What do we mean? A lot of times when we communicate, sometimes you'll say something wrong to somebody, but you know what I mean. And everyone can define what education means to them. But and a lot of times we go into the A and the Juice and the Latin meaning of the root word of the derivative from. But education was around before Latin. Latin became popular because Rome went to conquer the world. And when someone conquers, they imposes their beliefs and their languages and things like that. That's why we have people here speaking Spanish, people here speaking English, Africans speaking different dialects. So education, what does it mean to you? Education is something, if I simplify it, I would say it's knowledge, wisdom, and then understanding. Being able to access information and to use that information. And then pass that information on, and also commandeer your surroundings. And it starts off with surviving, learning how to survive, learning how to persevere, then learning how to command your surroundings. That's an educated person to me.
I'd like to piggyback behind him. I created a simplified definition of it as well. When I look at education, I think of it as being basically how to do something from the experiences that you've had that gave you exposure, gave you practice, and a process for development. In addition to that, being educated also seems to imply that it's past tense and it had a beginning and an end. So if we think about education, let's think more about learning, because learning is more continuous, and education has a process of starting and stopping. So through your life, you learn. Education may be something that may be more limited.
And that's exactly what my brother took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And when we look at that, knowledge is basically you're informed about something. So you're getting all this information. We get information all day long. Wisdom is you're going through life and you're going through things and experiences that make you understand the knowledge that you got, right? And then you have your understanding. If you don't understand everything that you've got, and if you don't understand what you've gone through in your life, you're not going to be able to understand. You didn't take in it. So then when you look at education, an educated person has to be one that can apply what they learned. If you don't have any applying situations, then you did not learn it. There's no such thing, so yeah.
Yes, I would like to piggyback on that because I think what all the panelists have said, but it hasn't been explicitly stated, is that there's a difference between schooling and education. And a lot of the times we use those words to mean the same thing, but they don't. Because you can matriculate through a school system and not have critical thinking skills, as you said. I mean, that's a pretty common thing because it's not actually even taught in most schools. So I think that being able to apply, you would expect that an educated person would be able to come into a situation that they hadn't been in before and be able to apply past knowledge to be able to solve the problem. And that's not something that necessarily comes out of being in school.
Yeah, I think education is definitely a learning experience. Plus, it's also teaching one how to function within a society. And I think that we can deviate from that as it applies to us. Okay? Because we've been taught to function in a society that's not necessarily ours. And that's what our kids have to go through. If you have a white Dick and Jane in the first grade, our kids can't relate to that white Dick and Jane, but it's how to function in a society.
I think education is to foster and cultivate that which exists within us by constantly experiencing different things and learning how to apply what we've learned. And I think that it's a lifelong process of continuing to grow. That's how I see it.
Well, I want to follow that up. It says that. Now, I believe, and I think most of us would agree, is that our children are geniuses. They have natural intelligence. They have gifts and they have talents. The question I ask, though, is, are we bringing out their natural gifts and their talents so and preparing them for the world that exists?
I'd like to respond to that by experience I had when I was in Washington, D.C. Mother got on the train with a little girl, and the little girl was pointing and said, "Mama, what is that?" And that woman says, "Oh, shut up. I don't have time to deal with that." "Mama, what is it?" "Ouch, be quiet. I can't deal with that." She was studying that young girl's learning experience. You're right. We have geniuses, we have great people, but are we really cultivating that? I'm not sure. It can't only be done in the schools, and we know oftentimes it's not done in the schools. It has to be done at home.
There was a study where someone looked at young children. I think they looked at 100 young children and tested them for divergent thinking, which is one of the ways where you determine if a kid is like gifted and talented, like, you know, how original is their thinking. And children before the age of 5 were geniuses. They scored at the genius level of divergent thinking. But then after that, something happened after the age of 5 where that genius has started going away. And I think we know what happens at age 5. What happens at age 5? They go to school. They go to school. They go to school and they lose their genius. And for me, that's a problem. And I know exactly why it happens. And it can go back to critical thinking skills, but what do you tell kids to do in school? You tell them to sit down, shut up, be quiet, and circle the right answer. And that is not how we foster genius.
I'm going to piggyback on her. There is a concept called educational banking. And when I first learned of it, I immediately thought of finance. I was like, oh, okay, something that deals with finance. But it doesn't have anything to do with that type of thing. Educational banking has something to do with the concept of human beings just being receptors. You deposit into them the information that you want them to know. And the gentleman who came up with it was Paulo Freire. And he said that if we just deposit into them what we want them to know, they'll only regurgitate what they were given. And so the opposite of that would have to be development of critical thinking, because all children are naturally curious. They ask all types of questions. So if they're asking questions, then that means there's something already within. And we need to apply something to that to help bring out what they have. Otherwise, if we just tell them to sit down, shut up, be quiet, then we're stopping, as he said, that. And that's very important. And schools are very, very good at it.
If we want to look at what's happening with our children, how we cultivating our children, we look at the problem. What's coming out, even our kids, you know, some of us, we look at kids that come from impoverished locations and they drop out and they do that. We look at kids that's graduating. I look at kids that's graduating from college and have all these letters on their names, and I have this doctor and I have this and that. But if you go out, if you look outside, you went into your home. Look out, you drive down 35, 410, 1604, what do you see that we own? Businesses, factories, whatever. Car companies, whatever. We went from slaves to being servants. We are graduating to be servants. And that is not productive for our people and our community. Even the ones that we did go at working for somebody else. We have very few major corporations that's black owned and black operated. We're working to perfect their system.
Absolutely. And for me to go back on what everybody has said, when we talk about the genius, what is a genius? That's basically God. That's the God in us. And we have to understand, I don't care what religion that you may say you're in, we all believe that there is a creator. You came, I came from somebody, somewhere, right? So when we are born, and we say the scripture says that we are in his image and likeness, then what does that look like? You have a likeness of God that created himself. So then when we're here, what's being suppressed is the divinity in ourselves and our children. That's how, dear brother, we're able to be put back into the slave mentality. So then what we're going to do, and we already have that slave mentality, what are we going to teach our children? Shh. Be quiet, don't speak too much, don't ask a whole bunch of questions, just be quiet. What's that doing? That's suppressing their divinity. So our children grow up and say, well, I could never ask questions anyway. Nobody wants to look forward to go be a warehouse worker, just that. Why can't I be a doctor? Why can't I be an astronaut? Why can't I be this? This is what you're going to be. One little point I wanted to say really quickly. I went to high school, and there was a young gentleman that took a test. And before he took the test, his teacher had already determined what he was going to be when he would grow up. And that was a janitorial worker. Now, I'm not saying that's bad at all, but what I'm saying, you already telling this boy, you put in this boy's head what he's determined to be, and guess what he was? He was a janitorial worker. So we're suppressing that divinity in our children.
I was going to ask if you could repeat the question, just so I make sure I'm on.
Yeah, basically saying that our children are born natural geniuses.
Okay.
And so.
Okay. Well, one thing I was thinking about my daughter. She's 2 years old. All children are artists. She's an artist. She will pick up a crayon. She'll start coloring. She's a singer. She sings all the time. She is a mathematician. She counts. She reads in her own way. She has pieces of language. And what I was thinking about is that we all have natural talents and abilities, but along the line, I think sometimes we get discouraged. Someone may tell us, well, art might not be your thing, or you can't make money doing that. So it discourages people. And I think it especially discourages young people. So I think one of the things that we have to do to continue to allow them to be genius is allow them to be creative and allow them to do the things that they enjoy, and know that all learning can come through what they enjoy.
Now, I want to follow that up, because in the response, I heard a couple of things, but this is the school system. Now, I've heard people talk about the school system, particularly for African American males, how it seems maybe a pipeline from school to prison. I've heard people talk about how the school system is failing our children. I've heard people point fingers at the teachers, and I've seen teachers point fingers at the parents, and I've seen the community questioning why is our children failing. So the question is the school system failing our children? And if so, why? Then I'll follow up that with another question. And I'm sorry, we're going to have a discussion. I just have one other question for the panel, then we're going to open it up for the room, all right? All right.
So I was recently in Dallas at the National Black Child Development Institute's annual conference, and the discussion was on the high expulsion rate of black boys in preschool. I don't know if you look like in preschool they're already expelling and suspending black boys at crazy rates. And so a study recently came out where they just looked at teachers and they found out that the teachers look for the black boys to make mistakes, like they search for them to do something wrong. And so they were talking about this because in the early childhood field, this is something that we're trying to change or whatever. But one of the people, or one of the researchers from that study said that systems, the outcomes of systems are what they were designed to do. Like, when you create a system, you create it with a certain outcome in mind. That's just what systems, that's just what a system is. And so I would add to that, you know, with human error, you could accidentally create something that has an effect, but then you immediately try to fix it. You're like, oh no, like, oh, this system is doing the opposite of what I want. But we're not seeing that happen. Like, there's not like a huge uproar within policymakers or you know, school boards or politicians or anybody that's like, oh man, look at this data. Like, we are seriously failing black kids. Our system isn't doing what it's supposed to do. That's not happening. So I think the reason why is because that's what it was designed to do. Because if it wasn't designed to do that, then we would be trying to redesign the system. But that I don't see that happening anywhere, really.
Again, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said a quote, and it went like this: if one won't treat you right, what will make you think that he will teach you right? You know? And this is where we have to be able to understand. And we're talking about all, there's so much we can talk about, the slavery mentality and so on and so forth. We parents, I'll talk to us first, we definitely have failed our children. He also said that our children don't go to school to learn how to read and write. They learn it at home. And so what we do, we have become lazy because now, you know, partial our father, partial's not. We gotta go to work, we gotta.
Older generation who came out of the segregated period. Some are saying that we had greater success for as black children and black education during the period of segregation because during that time we had black teachers in school who lived in the black community that had a greater connection and a commitment to the children that went to that school. And then you hear conversation about, well, the school system is not teaching our children black history. And so I asked the question, how did integration impact the education of black people? And let's go, I'm going to try to throw all these in the same together. And then you can take pieces of it. And then, why is it important that we learn and teach black history? And finally, who is responsible for teaching black history to our children?
I'm going to jump on that one first. Why is it important? And I'm just going to say, Greenwood, Archer, and Thomas. Do we remember the Gap Band? The Gap Band, the GAP came from those 3 streets in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The first song that we remember they came out with is "You Dropped the Bomb on Me." Remember? That song was about Black Wall Street. In Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921, blacks were very self-sufficient and prosperous. There was a business district there that completely was run and owned by us, and our businesses and all of our needs were met in that business district of Greenwood, Archer, and Pine. The reason we don't know about it today, and this is why Black history is very important, because our youth are running around only seeing stars as their models. They look at the Beyoncés and the Jay-Z's and blah, 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 without knowing there are people who contributed substance to who we are, and they lived it, and they were the living examples of it. Black Wall Street was destroyed from the ground and the air. We did not fly the planes over the area that dropped the bomb on ourselves. So that was another system that worked against us to destroy, and that whole business district, homes and area was completely wiped out because it was entirely too prosperous. So if our youth knew from way back in 1921 and even years beyond, African people and African American people have never learned to lean on someone else for our self-righteousness in many ways. When I say self-righteousness, I don't mean that just religiously. I mean for everything that was right in our lives. We did not give that over to someone else, because the only one who's responsible for ourselves, our livelihood, our learning, is us. That's the bottom line.
That's it. If this was a picture, and I pass this picture around to everybody in this room, the first person you're going to look for in that picture is who? You. If you don't see yourself in that picture, you're not going to be every bit interested. Oh, that's cute, pass it on. But when you see yourself, girl, was my hair done? How did you catch me looking cross-eyed? What was it? I get interested. We don't see ourselves in history. And the reason why we don't see ourselves in history is because our history wasn't the greatest. It was very, very dark and dread, and they kept those secrets from us, and they're keeping those secrets from us. We have to be able to understand, if we don't speak truth and give truth to where it is, we will never rise as a people. If we don't teach our children, and if this education system does not get out of the white supremacy mind state that it is in, we're going to die. We're going to fail. Knowing who we are, the black men, the brown men and women on this planet Earth. The scripture says the best in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But he said it was triple darkness. What color is darkness? Isn't it like you? Somebody has lied. There's a reason why you and I will suppress the way that we are, and there's a reason why the truth is being kept from you and I, because when we find the truth of who you and I are, we would rise and there would be no more suppression. But that's the problem that it is. So we can't expect the system to turn it around and tell you, I'm sorry, we told you you were slaves, and now we know the God is going to attack us because we lied and we treated you like you were dead people. The Constitution said you're not even real people. 3/5 of a human being. Why would you do that? We gotta talk about that nowadays. You gotta know who you are. That's why I opened up how I did. I said that I am who I am. Why? I've done a lot of things. I don't need to boast and brag. But what I can tell you is I'm in his image and likeness. You have to know that. And you've got to go and teach your children that. Everything else will rise up. Thank you. Yes.
Your question, there are a number of parts to it. One was questioning integration. Yeah. For me, that's a mixed bag. Okay. Was education good for us as a people? And I think it's according probably where you come from in this country is how you would respond to it. I come from Saginaw, Michigan, which is way north. I never went to a segregated school, and I think I came out all right. Okay, I had to be self-taught Black history, which I've spent 20, 30 years doing since. But there are some, we know there are some flaws in the integrated schools because white teachers don't understand our kids. And I think if we're going to have integrated schools, you need, I talked to the chair of the education department years ago at UTSA and said, you need that. You don't have the right classes. You can't send a young white girl into a black school because she doesn't understand the black kids. And that's a problem. So I think that integration probably could work if we had a better understanding when these folks go into teaching our schools. And the second part, I'll just respond to what you said. I'll just ask everyone out there, do you know Davy Crockett or O.B. Mann? You know Davy Crockett, but you don't know O.B. Mann. Do you know John D. Rockefeller and John B. Stratford? You know John Rockefeller, but you don't know John B. Stratford.
That's right.
Well, John B. Stratford was the richest black man in Black Wall Street. He owned the #1 top Stratford hotel. By today's measures, he would have been a millionaire. And all that was destroyed. And Oklahoma took the massacre out of the history books. But my point is, our kids need to know John B. Stratford and not John D. Rockefeller. O.B. Mann was the baddest brother in Tulsa. Because he went over across those railroad tracks and told those white folks, you're not going to let stick rolling. And he meant it. And he shot that white man. And that's what started the whole thing. And our kids need to know O.B. Mann because he was fighting for equality. Davy Crockett was fighting to take away equality. And so there's something wrong with that picture. And it's just, I think that if we can enforce our own going further, we got a problem in Austin with that Texas Education Association. We got a major problem up there. And if, they're not going to change. They're going to keep teaching their propaganda. And so maybe there's something we need to do within our own communities to change that. So, but you just can't put down integration. And there were some problems with it. But I'm telling you, when I was teaching at Northwest Vista College, it got to the point that those white students came in, they didn't see a black teacher, they just wanted to get an A from me. And at UTSA, we brought some truth to those kids there. They didn't like what they were hearing, but we brought truth to them when we had the Afro-American Studies department. That was because of integration. So I'll stop there. Okay.
All right, wow. I've said a lot, and there's a lot to that question. The thing about the Black Wall Street, we hear a lot of people say we need to get back to the Black Wall Street. One thing about the Black Wall Street, they were independent. We need to get back to independence. You don't have to have your own town. When we were segregated, the movie that the brothers Walk on the River, that's an excellent movie. If y'all haven't seen it, y'all need to see it. Tells about San Antonio. Black Wall Street was bombed. Slocum, Texas invaded, people survived. Rosewood, all these things. San Antonio didn't happen here. Integration happened here. Because San Antonio, the blacks in San Antonio owned their own businesses, owned cab companies, everything that they needed, they owned. And then desegregation happened, integration happened. And then we stopped doing for ourselves and started going to others, and then we were dependent on them. We still dependent on others today. We're not independent. Every African nation wants independence. Every black community should want independence. When I raise my kids, I want them to grow up to be independent. Not to rely on me and not to rely on someone else. What happens and what's happening in Black America is we're still dependent. Carter G. Woodson, 1933, published a book, Miseducation of the Negro. And when he was talking about their education, you don't have to worry about what they do. If you control their mind and their education, you don't have to tell them where to stand. They're going to know their place. Our people are in a place. Even if we graduate from Harvard, whatever, we're not independent. We're still dependent on somebody else. And we think that person is successful. Now there's a little, smidgen of people here, scattered here, where they own their own thing and they're a little more independent. But I'm a troubled person because my people are troubled. The Eurocentric principle of things is individuality.
Yes.
We're tribal people, the black people, the brown people, we're tribal people. We're worried about a community. And when we have people that say, well, we're doing okay, I'm doing okay, because they have a Eurocentric mindset. We have to think about our community. When those people went on the plantation, they didn't just say, you know what, I'm tired of this, I'm gonna get up and leave. They played along with the system and they had in their mind what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get up out of here, but I know I can't just do this in broad daylight. I know I have to put some food away. I know, so they prepared to get up out of there. Others was like, man, I'm not, you can't leave here. What's gonna be on the other side? A lot of us are like that. They're worried about breaking away and being independent. When we teach our kids about, we're using the word desegregation or integration, we haven't really been integrated. We've been tolerated. This is why things are happening in the streets to our kids today, because they tolerated us to a point. They tolerate you until you go to a certain point. If you take a knee, then they lose that toleration for you. If you talk about how you want your justice, then they lose their toleration for you, because we're not integrated. The city is not integrated. The schools are not integrated, because even if it's an all-black school, they're learning from a Eurocentric mindset. That's not integration. When you have a school on the north side, near Stone Oak, learning about the true black history, and the schools on the west side learning about the true brown history and the true white history and the true Asian history, then that's integration. But they're not learning, we're learning from them, about them, lies about them, and lies about us. That's not integration. So we need to teach our kids that we're not integrated, we're being tolerated. This is why things are happening. And then that's something we need to fight for. You need to expose the problem and then try to cure the problem. We're not exposing problems, and so we're not curing problems.
Appreciate it. Brother Lodge.
Okay, to address what you said first about integration versus segregation, one thing I learned through the research of the film is when we talk to people who, especially right here in San Antonio, elders who had attended Wheatley High School. I'm not from San Antonio, but one thing I knew from interviewing people was that their eyes lit up when they talked about Wheatley. And I think that we have to understand really what a community looked like when it was segregated here. And I'll just use San Antonio as the example, and what it looked like after integration. So in a segregated society, when as a black person or as black people, you were pretty much relegated to one particular community. You had doctors, you had lawyers, you had teachers, you had people that were domestic servants, you had bus drivers, but they all pretty much lived in the same neighborhood regardless to income. When integration took place and people started to move out of those communities, the first people that were able to leave were those that could afford to leave. So in that community, what started to happen is that the tax base lowered because higher income earners started to leave that particular community. So if you understand the tax base and that schools are pretty much funded through taxes, you started to see that the schools that stayed in that community and the people that lived in that community had less. So to go back, I'm not going to say whether it was better or worse, that's not for me to judge, but what I do know is that if you had a multitude of people from different backgrounds, from different levels of education, your education is going to be better and your community is going to be better. If you can see a doctor living right next door to you, it gives you aspirations that you know you could be a doctor. If you see a lawyer or a person who has achieved a certain level of success, you have something to aspire to, even if that's not in your particular household. And the same goes for the school. If your school teacher lives in your neighborhood, they understand your plight, they understand your situation. One of the first things that you said is that the teachers may have cared more about the children because they were from that community and they understood what the children went through. And I think that's really the key, is that the teachers and the people that are educating or giving knowledge to a community have to care about the people in that community. And they have to care about the children in that community. So I just wanted to add on with that. When you talk about, before I even talk about Black history, just history in general, I think what Sister Muhammad said is really key. That's really it. If you don't see yourself in it, you don't have any interest in it. Studies have shown that history is one of the least liked subjects in school. It's because it's given, in America, history is taught from a perspective of patriotism and accumulation of facts. It's not really, even though we say it's his story, it's not told as a story. And we're usually not given the truth about people because it's sanitized so that we will admire people but never relate to the people. So to take it to Black history, I think it's really important that we learn who we are because we need to know our past in order to better understand our present so then we know where to go in the future. Black history has been shunned and taken from us as a whole for so long that we weren't allowed to learn about who we truly are because we would not be in a docile position if we knew where we came from and who we are. We would start to recognize the greatness from our past and then understand the greatness in our present. So ultimately, we need to know our history, and it's up to us to teach it because we can't depend on somebody else outside of ourselves to give something so important. Not only that, we have to do it because we are the best of it. We care the most. Because it's not about how much knowledge is, what do you care about giving it? It's how you give it, more so than what you give. So ultimately, you know, every year I hear people say, well, Black History Month is not as necessary now. And I think that's selfish. Because if you know it, it's like having money. If you have a wealth of, if you have wealth, monetary wealth, and others don't, then somebody still out there don't have it. If you have a wealth of Black history, you know Black history, that's good for you, but trust that there's somebody out here that don't. So we have to make sure that we continue to push it, not just during the month of February, as much as we can, but that it becomes part of who we are. Because through history, all things are possible. You can teach science through history. You can teach mathematics through history. All of these things are possible through the lens of who we are, and it is important for us as a people as we move forward to know who we are, because one of the goals of American society is really to strip people of all ethnic identity to make you assimilate into the American culture. So that's why people who may have been native Spanish speakers or native Arabic speakers, when they come to the country, they may not even teach that to their children, because they want their children to assimilate into the culture or into the American society, which means stripping down anything that may be culturally identifying. So we have to keep our cultural identity because that's part of who we are. So if we're going to step out into this world in our fullest capacity, we have to retain who we are.
We're going to open it up, but I want to give Sister Toni a chance if you have something.
Okay, so I think it's important to note that integration hasn't ever happened. Desegregation is what happened. And our schools are very segregated right now. Just as much as they've ever been, and in some places worse. So that's important to know. So it's not, but regardless, it's not about like the bodies of kids that are sitting in desks that just, except it is because, you know, kids make other kids feel terrible about who they are. When I talk to my elders, they tell me about overtly racist white teachers. Like my mom can tell me about a white teacher that told them they need to be bathed in bleach, and that literally beat them. And so she has trouble with spelling now because of all the anxiety of what happened. Because my family is from rural North Texas, which is more like the deep South than it is the rest of Texas. So there was actual harm that happened to students from going to the white schools with the white teachers, that I don't know that is talked about, where like they were literally harmed by going to those schools. But then even today, when you have the situation where 80% of the teaching force is white, middle class, female, and you have the children of color in the classroom, well, anybody that's researched it has seen that these teachers have bias for white kids or against black kids. They have lower expectations for black and brown kids. They discipline them more frequently. They do all of these things. So I think the issue here is what happened to the black teachers more than like what physical building are people going to. Because I think that we know, it's not even something I think, we know that the relationship that a teacher has with their students is instrumental in a student's success. We also know that having at least one black teacher makes you more likely to be successful, and that's period, whoever you are, black, brown, whatever. Having at least one black teacher, K through 12, means you're more likely to be successful. So I think a problem when we look at integration and desegregation and all of this, what we really need to look at is who is teaching our kids. And as he said, are they prepared to teach your kids? And I can tell you, I teach pre-service teachers, and people can tell you about the pushback I get from telling them you have to choose a book that look like the kids in your class. I'm telling you, I have students that will take points off of their grade instead of just selecting a book to read that look like the kids in their classroom. So when we're talking about this, you really need to say, who is teaching my child? Do they even like my child? Do they want my child to be successful? And even if how to make sure that my child is successful. And the answer is going to be no, more than likely to at least one of those. So I think that, and I don't know, I'm obviously very young, but in talking to people, it seemed like maybe the key to segregated schools were the black teachers teaching the black students. Or maybe it was just like not being taught by white teachers that didn't like the black students, which is another thing altogether. But I think that knowing this, we need to make sure that we are teaching our kids the things that they need to know. We need to learn how the system works if we are in a situation where we have to put our kids in the system, because everyone can't homeschool or whatever, you know. So we need to know how those systems work, because when they're not doing what we expect the system to do for us, because as I said, I think the system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. But if the system is not doing what we needed to do for our children, we need to be there saying, excuse me, this is not okay. This is not okay. Like my child, one of my children, well, both of them are extremely intelligent. And I was telling their teacher every day, I need the GT paperwork. I need the GT paperwork. I need the GT paperwork. I know I can refer my child to GT services. My child is giving the talent to give me the paperwork. She never gave me the paperwork. So I called the GT coordinator for the district. I need this GT paperwork. Miss such and such, when I give it to me, the deadline is in 2 weeks to get it to me now. And so things like that, when you know how the system works, and you can see when they're trying to do their little stuff, you can go in there and say, no, you're not doing this to my child. And when you can tell other parents, did you know that this is coming up and this is what you're gonna have to do? Because if we're gonna be in there, we gotta be in there fighting. Like, we cannot be passively sitting around saying, oh man, it didn't work. Like, dude, they don't want you to succeed, okay? Like, just recognize that, understand that, teach, tell everybody. And then, if you're gonna be in there, you gotta be in there fighting.
Can I say something? No, just a minute, sir. Just a minute. Okay, family, we want to take the opportunity, because I know we've been